We
are
We are
cultivate.
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 Cultivate. We are Cultivate.
Hello and welcome to Ye Olde Crime, where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear. I'm your host, Lindsay Valenti, and with me is my sister and co-host, Maddie Stengel.
Hello.
Well, hi.
It's been a minute since I've seen your face.
I know, it has been a hot
A
second.
week. A whole week.
I have two things in the corrections cubby. And what is the thing you said last time for the kudos corner? Is that what you called it?
Maybe.
I don't know what it was. My brain.
Somebody
Whatever.
will tell us.
Someone
we'll find out
will
later.
mention it to us, yeah. Anyway, I got three things. So the first is that the last TeePublic sale of the month is October 23rd to the 28th. There's fun things up there. Have at it. 2. In last week's episode, I misspoke by stating that Mayum lived in the Philippines when she in fact lives in Singapore.
Oh, no. Okay.
Very different places.
Very different places, yeah.
So I am so
Just
sorry.
Apologies for not knowing the geography as well.
I feel like in the back of my head I knew it, and then I just wrote it down wrong. So that's on me. That's not on her. But I appreciate that she DM'd me on Instagram to correct me, and then she sent me a bunch of really beautiful
nice.
photos from Singapore, and I was like, oh, I want to go to there. So
Singapore would be really cool.
And third thing is, I need to apologize for not putting out the most recent Can You Crack the Cramp Word episode. It's the first time in the history of the show where I have not released an episode on time.
Wow. Honestly, kudos though to you for up till this point having that streak. Because I know we've definitely recorded in the 11th hour before. And I'm sure our listeners will understand and not be too mad about the fact that you were just a little bit late.
I owned up to it. We'll just have 2 weeks in a row of Cramp Word episodes.
It's
and there you
actually
go.
just a surprise spooky bonus. There you go.
Yep. Anyway, closing the cubby now. That's all the things. Let's now segue into the last spooky story for October pre-Halloween. The Distillery District of Toronto. Information was pulled from the following sources. 2024 The Globe and Mail article by Dave LeBlanc, 2023 Toronto.com article by Joanna Lavoie, 2022 Retail Insider article by Mario Tanaguzzi, nice. 2022 Toronto Journey 416 article by Denise Marie, 2020 Toronto Star article by Vinay Menon, 2019 Eat, Drink, Travel article by Lisa Jackson, 2014 Julie Kinnear blog post, 2010 Toronto Ghost blog, the Distillery Historic District website, Spirit of York Distillery Company, there's 2 links from them, Ultimate Ontario article by Lisa Ladocour, it's French, I tried, and 2 Wikipedia links.
Nice.
Thank you, as always, to Carrie Ann for her research assistance for this episode, and links to all of these articles will be included in the show notes. Want to be social with us? You can see pics from this week's episode, bonus content, and funny memes on X at Ye Olde Crime Pod, or on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube at Ye Olde Crime Podcast.
Speaking of YouTube, we have a special playlist just for our Can You Crack the Cramp Word segments with our guest podcasters to see who can correctly guess the meaning of some obscure Victorian slang terms. If that's your thing, check it out.
So, the Distillery District of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, was started on Friday, October 5th, 1832. So, the business that would become the district started on that date.
Okay. I was like, how does a district start? Today's the day, everybody.
Founded by James Warts and his brother-in-law William Gooderham. Gooderham? I'm going to say Gooderham because I like the way it sounds.
It is
The
nice.
pair produced whiskey primarily for export to the rest of the British Empire under the name of Gooderham and Warts. Gooderham. At one point, it was even the largest distillery in the whole of Canada.
Nice. I mean, that would make sense because I'm sure at the time that was probably one of the biggest ports that Canada had. So that checks out.
Located on the Toronto waterfront, which today is the east side near Parliament and Front Streets, James had previously owned a mill back in Dis, England, prior to moving to York, which is what Toronto was called before it became Toronto.
It used to be called Dis, England?
Well, Dis, England is where James was from, but York, which would become Toronto, is where he moved. I know, it's a lot.
Dis, England.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So James moved to York in 1831, where he established himself in the same trade by constructing a prominent 22-meter or 70-foot tall brick windmill near the mouth of the Don River, close to the Toronto Bay.
Nice.
So like a grist mill.
Yeah. So he just came in guns blazing, pretty much.
In the year it was founded, William joined the venture, and the pair processed grain provided by the farmers of Ontario that they would then ship out via the conveniently located port of Toronto. Because it's right there.
Right.
Not long before William's arrival in York, the cholera outbreak hit the town of about 4,000 people in mid-June. And by the time the disease had run its course, it had claimed between 250 and 400 people. Gotta love cholera.
Yeah, that's quite the timing.
Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yep. In 1834, tragedy struck with the death of James, so just 2 years after the founding of the company.
Oh, wow.
But William continued to run the operation on his own, and due to the influx of wheat, he would go on to expand the business in 1837, converting the business into a brewery and distillery, which would soon become the main purpose of the company. And he continued to run as the sole manager until his previous partner's son, James Gooderham Warts, was old enough to be named co-manager in 1845 at the age of 27.
Honestly, that's really nice that he continued to let him do that, because I feel like we hear time and time again of like these dudes that, his dad was the one that started the company and he came in late but improved it and is letting him continue the legacy. That's a good sign. It's a good sign that he wasn't a total garbage human.
Yeah.
And also a good sign that he was 27 and not like 18. Because when he was like of age, I'm like, what does that mean?
He was 12.
They're still too young in terms of having a brewery.
The distillery was converted to steam power in 1841, which was easier to manage because prior to that, it was a windmill. And
yeah, but we also know how dangerous the steam stuff and how expensive that was. That was a huge decision.
And the distillery would become fully functional by 1850, which is cool.
Okay. How long did that take?
So they started expanding the business in 1837.
So it kind of sounds like they did it right, slow and steady.
In 1859, construction of the Stone Distillery started. Since it was built on the waterfront, it had easy access to the main train lines of Toronto, and the 5-story limestone mill and distillery was completed in 1861.
Okay.
Fun fact, during its first full year of production in 1862, the distillery made 700,000 imperial gallons, or 3,180,000 liters of spirits, which at the time was a quarter of the spirits produced in the entirety of Canada.
Wow. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot for a new enterprise, too.
In the later half of the 19th century, William's son George took over production, expanding the distillery so it could produce over 2 million gallons a year. This also made the distillery one of the largest employers in Toronto.
Yeah.
In 1863, boiler number 2 exploded on Christmas
Oh,
Eve.
and on Christmas Eve?
Yep, in the Boiler House building, killing stoker John Kingston, who had been on site at the time of the incident.
I bet it was a blessing, potentially, that it was on Christmas Eve, because I bet it was just him. I bet they made everybody that would normally be there not be there.
Yeah, because I think he had just come on, and his job was just to stoke the fires to keep the boilers going.
That is such a bummer. You just go
Yeah.
and it just blows up. I hope he died instantly. I really do.
Well,
No.
the Globe noted the event as, quote, about 25 minutes to 6 o'clock yesterday morning, December 24th, one of the boilers for the distillery of Messrs. Goodrum and Warts burst with a loud report, destroying the building and hurrying one unfortunate man without a moment's warning into eternity. In a short time, the body was discovered lying amidst the debris, but so mangled, spattered, and disfigured as to be scarcely recognizable. The
Oh,
legs and arms were broken, the body mangled, while it was burned and scalded by the fire and water in a most frightful manner. End quote.
just kidding. They're not demure. Doing it. That was okay.
Yeah. They just
Conflicted.
choose to be flowery when they want to be flowery.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, his spirit is gone," but like his body was so messed up.
Yeah.
Girl.
In addition to the horrific loss of John's life, the Globe article also noted that chunks of metal were thrown up to 50 yards away as a result of the blast, including stones that weighed between 50 and 100 pounds being hurled into the air.
Yeah. The fact that it didn't really become more catastrophic is pretty amazing.
In 1864, a malt house and cooperage were added to the site, and although business was thriving, another blow would be dealt to the firm in October of 1869. According to the Distillery Heritage website, quote, on October 26, 1869, fire erupted in the decade-old Stone Distillery, lighting up the Toronto sky, attracting crowds of spectators and engaging Toronto's volunteer firemen. Around 7 p.m., a still exploded, sending debris into the air. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Although the wooden interior was destroyed, the exterior walls and most of the machinery escaped serious damage. The loss was estimated at about $120,000 or $2.8 million today. End quote.
Still, though, the fact that nobody died.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but in the Victorian era, people died horrifically all the time. Like, not that they don't now, but wow,
Yeah.
they have like these two huge explosions and fires, and so far just one casualty. Like, that's crazy.
As it was reported, a small cask of benzene had caught fire and exploded in the fermenting cellar around dinner time.
Oh, man.
It didn't take long for residents to brave the snow to gawk at the disaster, as the fire was visible for miles into the countryside.
Yeah.
2 volunteer fire brigades quickly arrived on the scene, putting out the blaze, and thankfully there was no loss of life or life-threatening injuries, which is always good.
Always good.
Renovations to the interior of the Stone Distillery were completed in 1870, so the following year, when production resumed. A few years later, in 1873, additional stills were installed and 10 alcohol storage buildings were built between 1879 and 1891 to meet the new government requirements that whiskey be aged for 2 years prior to its sale.
Interesting. I wonder why.
The final building to be constructed on the property was the pump house for the fire department in 1895. They're
Uh,
like, we're just gonna have a fire
yeah,
right
yeah.
here. Fire station here.
Maybe like that should have been a little farther up on the list, but like at least it got there. It got there.
Yeah.
It got built better than others.
In addition to milling and brewing, Gooderham and Worts had their fingers in a number of pots. They had controlling interest in the Toronto and Nipissing Railway, which was one of the main lines connecting northern Toronto with the rural areas of the province. They also built the Gooderham Building in 1892 to be its new headquarters. And fun fact, this building is still a notable Toronto landmark today.
Nice.
Business expansion and growth began to slow down at the end of the 1800s as beer and wine became more popular in Canada, hindering the sale of whiskey.
Oh.
The Ontario Temperance Act of 1916, which
Uh-oh.
banned the sale of alcohol in the province of Ontario, also hit the firm hard.
Yep.
They were able to limp along by exporting their alcohol to areas outside of Ontario, namely Quebec, where it still managed to trickle its way into Ontario.
Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah. Having a varied portfolio kept them afloat during this time, particularly their production and sale of antifreeze, which became essential during the war and as a result of the growing number of automobile owners.
Like, good for them, but also incredibly terrifying that whiskey and antifreeze are made in the same place.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. We just back that up there and just
Yep.
confirm. I
Yep.
don't like that.
Yeah. Things changed for Gooderham and Worts starting in the 1920s. In 1923, the firm was sold for $1.5 million, or $27.7 million today, to millionaire industrialist Harry C. Hatch, who used it to market and manufacture spirits during Prohibition that would get smuggled into the United States.
Interesting.
3 years later, in 1926, Harry purchased the second largest distiller in Canada, Hiram Walker and Sons Limited, who make Canadian Club whiskey in Windsor. The firms were combined and renamed Hiram Walker Gooderham and Worts Limited, and although rum would continue to be produced in Toronto, it would start to slow down. So at some point, in addition to making whiskey, Gooderham and Worts had also started producing rum.
Makes sense. Sticking with the darker spirits.
4 years later, in 1928, Gooderham and Worts were convicted of tax evasion after selling whiskey to Rocco Perry, a notorious bootlegger who testified in court in 1927.
What a jerk.
He's like, hey, if I'm going to
Hey.
get hit, you guys got to get hit too.
Right.
The firm was ordered to pay a fine of $439,744, or roughly $8.1 million today.
Which was probably a literal drop in their bucket at the time.
Probably.
Like a slap on the wrist.
In 1957, the antifreeze production was phased out, and the last whiskey was made on the property that same year.
So they were the same.
They were in the same containers.
Why does my
No, they
antifreeze
weren't.
smell like whiskey?
Why does my whiskey smell like antifreeze? Production would shift to the manufacture of rum from molasses. So they had already been sort of doing rum, but like they decided to halt everything else and just switch over to rum. In the late 1980s, British concern Allied Lyons purchased the firm and closed it in 1990. During the time that it lay vacant, the 13 acres that make up the district gained renewed life as the setting for over 800 films and commercials, such as X-Men, Tommy Boy, Chicago, and The Hurricane. So if you remember in the original X-Men, that scene where Magneto, as a kid during like the Holocaust, like bent and opened the gates using his telekinesis or whatever for his for metal. Yeah, that was shot there. That's like the famous gates of the Mill District. Anyway. In 1988, the distillery complex, as well as the 30 buildings that make up the property, were designated as a National Historic Site of Canada and has been protected under the Ontario Heritage Act since 1976.
Nice.
In fact, it contains the largest and best preserved collection of Victorian-era industrial architecture in the whole of North America.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, just it still kind of bothers me and boggles my mind of how they were able to have these crazy explosions and fires and recover so quickly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whoever made those structures and those machines, like, they did a great job because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was so commonplace to like hear of a place just burning down to the
Mm-hmm.
stubs. It's
Not here.
crazy. Not
Not
there.
here.
No.
The plaque noting its historic site status reads as follows. Quote, the seeds of Canada's largest 19th century distilling firm were sown in 1837 when a still was set up on this site to convert surplus grain from an 1832 grist mill into whiskey. Exploiting new technologies and commercial opportunities, Gooderham and Worts grew steadily, paralleling Toronto's rise as a manufacturing center. With the large stone distillery erected in 1859 to 61, and brick malt house, kilns, warehouses, shops, and offices built before 1900, this complex is an outstanding example of Victorian industrial design in terms of integrity, historical associations, and aesthetic qualities. End quote.
Nice.
And it wasn't until 2006 that the site would be converted to the Distillery District as it exists today. So in 2001, Cityscape Holdings Incorporated purchased the property with the intention of transforming it into a pedestrian-oriented shopping and arts district. In addition to the Young Center for the Performing Arts, which is also owned by Cityscape, the complex is home to 24 buildings that have been converted into spaces for artists and galleries and
Nice.
small business properties. The building properties range in founding dates from 1859 all the way to 1927. So these are very old buildings.
Yeah. It's got to be similar to kind of the North Loop in our Mill City district too.
Yep.
Got a similar setup.
The district reopened on May 22nd, 2003, and all of the shops are owned and operated by small businesses, ranging from boutiques to art galleries, jewelry stores, cafes, as well as the Mill Street Brewery. So you're not going to find a franchise in here. It's all
Curated.
mom
it
and pop
seems.
curated type of places.
Nice.
It is also the site of Toronto's annual Christmas market, aka the Distillery Winter Village.
Hmm.
Now we're going to go to some paranormal stuff.
Is it just the one guy that got exploded? Because I would haunt that place. I'd be so mad. Like, seriously, I'm the only one?
No, there's more than that. As I alluded to earlier, tragedy took place pretty early on at the Distillery District, and this is likely the start of the variety of paranormal activities that currently take place on the property. So 2 years after the founding of Gooderham and Worts Distillery in 1834, James Wort's wife, Elizabeth, died during childbirth.
Sad.
And 2 weeks later, James completed suicide by jumping into the well of the windmill where he drowned.
Oh, that was a terrible choice of place, but okay.
Mm-hmm. James is by far the most commonly seen spirit at the distillery. He's been known to shut doors, tamper with lights, and even make unexpected visits to workers and tourists alike. So people have claimed to have seen him like peering into windows early in the mornings when they're like opening up the businesses.
Super nosy.
Yeah, he's just kind of
Time is
like
money, ladies.
just making sure everything's, tip top.
Knock, knock.
The distillery is such a hot spot for paranormal activity that the local paranormal group, Toronto Ghosts and Hauntings Research Society, has an active file for the site that documents everything from doors opening and closing on their own to strange banging noises, flickering lights, and other activity experienced at the district.
Your typical haunted
So they just,
stuff. And it's just a forever file.
because they're always adding to it.
That's crazy.
A former staff member of the Boiler House, which has since been changed over to El Catrine Restaurant, saw a bottle of wine fly off an oversized rack in the restaurant. The eyewitness was quoted as saying, quote, "I've never seen anything like it. the bottle flew away from the shelf and then dropped and landed flat on the bar. Didn't break, didn't wobble, just landed. End quote.
Is it almost like those little like flip bottle challenges that you would always see?
Kinda, yeah, like it just kind of landed.
That's really funny.
The next one's not so funny. Another staff member prepping for the dinner rush at Boiler House had a truly terrifying experience involving that same wine rack. An eyewitness noted, quote, "The color dropped from her face and she started trembling. She pointed towards the wine rack and said, 'There is a man hanging by his neck above the bar,' end quote."
Oh.
The waitress in question then bolted from the restaurant and never came back.
Right before dinner rush, too. Oh my gosh.
So this eyewitness saw one of their coworkers experience this before they like bolted out of the restaurant.
Oh my god. No, thank you. Yeah, I would not want to go into my place of work and see somebody hanging spookily in a place where I know they don't exist, but they do in this moment.
Another encounter includes that of an event planner who was on the first floor of the Boiler House when they heard what sounded like a heavy chair being dragged across the floor on the level above them, even though no one else was in the building at the time.
Do you think it was the person hanging themselves?
I
bet it was.
A man dressed in outdated garb and work boots has been spotted in the fermentation cellar by a member of a film crew, but it quickly disappeared as soon as it had been spotted. A man matching this same description has been seen in other locations disappearing through a wall.
So maybe it was a path at one point.
And given how explosive his death was, it shouldn't be surprising to hear that it's believed that poor John Kingston is the man that haunts the Boiler House.
That would make sense. Because, like, I don't know how you would know you're dead in such a quick explosion like that. Because I feel like the shrapnel or, like, whatever hit him would have just killed him instantly. Hopefully. I really hope so.
Yeah. The Fire Pump House, which is now home to Balzac's Coffee Roasters, has a large, heavy chandelier proudly on display inside its lobby, with 2 ceiling fans located on either side of it.
I don't like that. Don't do that with the chandelier. Why are you?
Even when both fans are on full blast, the most it will do to the chandelier is cause it to slowly rotate in place. Like, this thing is solid metal. It is huge.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
But I also don't like that. I don't like a giant heavy thing that doesn't move and is dangling above my head. That doesn't sound cute or fun or nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't worry. 2 industrial ceiling fans can't phase it. Okay, but why is it above my head in this moment?
Well, one early morning, as the manager was entering the building, they looked up and discovered that the chandelier was violently moving back and forth for over 10 minutes.
Yeah, no. Nope. That's enough for me, dog. That would be my cue to leave and never come back.
In addition to this odd incident, workers at Balzac's over the years have reported feeling a presence, such as someone standing nearby, as well as a ghostly and as yet unidentified woman that is sometimes seen on the staircase.
I wonder if it's the wife that died in childbirth.
Maybe.
Or they're by a thing of water, though, right? Yeah, it could be anybody.
The Toronto Bay.
It honestly could be anybody then. At the point.
Yeah. Crimson and Clover, a clothing retailer on Gristmill Lane, is home to a malevolent spirit of a man that enjoys haunting the back area of the shop, particularly near the office and the bathrooms. Yeah.
Right where you want to be like quiet and private, he messes things up.
Women who work at the boutique have shared their discomfort being alone in the space at night, particularly when having to go into the office to do any sort of reporting.
Yeah, not great.
Tank House Lane is home to a poltergeist.
Even better. Great.
Who bothered Mill Street Brewery during an early private event by stacking all of their rented chairs on top of one another while the staffer had been on break. So This is prior to when condos got put up behind them, when they used to have these private events. And they had a tent set up with all of these, like, folding chairs. And then they came back from going to the bathroom or something. And then all the chairs are just stacked up on top of each other.
No.
Stacking things seems to be the poltergeist trick of choice, as just down the lane at Pure Spirits Oyster House, a staff member had been greeted by a tower of plates. After viewing it as a harmless prank and resetting them, you can imagine their surprise when, upon returning just a few minutes later, the tower of plates had once again been assembled.
No, thank you.
No. And it's not only the buildings themselves that seem to be haunted. Items of furniture also seem to have quote-unquote possessions of their own.
Great.
For example, at the company Wildly Delicious, they have a display cabinet that enjoys playing knock-knock jokes.
What?
So members of staff have reported hearing 3 distinct knocks on the left side of the cabinet. When a staff member has the balls to knock back,
Yeah.
it'll knock in response again on the other side.
That's not a joke.
Yeah, I don't
That's
like
not
it.
a knock-knock joke. It'd be funny if, like, you heard the 3 knocks, you returned it, and you heard like a burr, like it farted or something cute and like relatively harmless. I don't like the whole like open the cabinet, knock, knock, knock.
The Abnormal Beauty Company, which is located on Distillery Lane, is home to 1-foot-tall gray, white, or black streaks that have been caught moving across the floor and meowing. It's believed that the building in which the company is located may have once upon a time stored grain, which would have been quite the draw for vermin, hence the need for cats, even of the ghostly variety.
Yeah. Catch the mice, rats.
And when we went to Canada in March of 2020, we were able to go on the Spirits of the Distillery District ghost tour by the Haunted Walk, which was a lot of fun.
Nice.
There was much more that was discussed that I've since forgotten or couldn't find the exact details of online.
Yeah.
So if you're in the area and want to visit a truly awe-inspiring piece of Victorian architecture and get a little spooked out while doing it, I highly recommend checking out the tour.
That's
It was pretty cool. And that's the Distillery District.
Nice.
And granted, I can't think back that far, but I feel like there were a few more accidents that took place there.
Oh, probably. I would be really shocked.
That resulted in deaths or dismemberments. But again, I can't remember, and I couldn't find anything online. So, I don't know. If you're in Toronto, go check it out for yourself and let me know what I missed.
Yeah.
If you love the show, the best way to support us is to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Good Pods, CastBox, Podcast Addict, and or Audible. Links to all of these are in our show notes, or if you're already listening on one of these platforms, you know what to do.
Oh, and while you're at it, shoot us a question you'd like to hear us answer on the pod. We'll give you a special shout out and address your burning questions all at the same time. The weirder, the better. Submit them via link in our show notes or shoot them to us in our DMs.
And this week's podcast plug is the A Hateful Homicide podcast. A Hateful Homicide by host Mallory Jenna Robinson is a true crime and investigative journalism podcast dedicated to covering the stories regarding the murders and hate crimes involving our transgender, gender non-binary, non-conforming, intersex, and two-spirit communities in the United States and abroad.
Nice.
It is part of the Darkcast Network, and we will have a link to it in the show notes.
That's a good title for it. The alliteration really wraps you in.
We wouldn't be here without support from listeners like you. If you're interested in supporting us financially, you can leave a one-time or monthly donation over on Buy Me a Coffee or our Venmo page. Links are in the show notes. And we make a point of reaching out to send you a thank you note and stickers to show our appreciation.
Want to show your support in a more concrete way? Pick up some Yield Crime merch over at our TeePublic shop. We shout out whenever there is a sale each month, and we work to make sure we're creating new designs and changing it up whenever possible. And hey, thanks for listening.
And Carrie Ann would like to know, what sweets would you happily eat watching movies or TV shows?
Oh man, I have so many.
Go for it.
I mean, I'm all about popcorn. So,
Mhm.
and I also don't discriminate. I can have like movie theater popcorn, popcorn made at home with a little bit of sea salt and some olive oil, cheddar popcorn, kettle corn, what have you. Those I really like to munch on. If it's at night, I usually like to have any sort of snack with peanut butter or peanuts in it because peanut butter has some natural, what's it called? The turkeys have the sleepy hormone.
Oh, yeah.
It is on the tip of my tongue.
Is it tryptophan?
Tryptophan.
Tryptophan. I was so close.
Yep,
I'm,
you
I'm
were.
impressed with myself.
But there's a little bit. There's just a little bit in peanut butter, and my blood sugars tend to go down at night when I'm sleeping. So if I have something with a little bit of protein while I'm snacking, it helps stabilize them too. So I'll do like peanut M&Ms, peanut butter M&Ms. Honestly, like peanut butter toast. If I'm feeling super fancy, I'll do like Nutter Butter toast,
Ooh,
right? But that's only if you're not in your bed, because like
that's a mess.
marshmallows and peanut butter and sheets tend to not work out. But yeah, I'd say those are kind of my go-to snacky snacks for that. What about you? Maybe a fruit and a cheese too. Gotta love a good cheese.
I also like popcorn. I tend
Mhm.
to lean more towards kettle corn
Mhm.
or like the Chicago mix, which is caramel corn and cheddar
Mhm.
popcorn. I also don't mind eating apples when I'm watching TV.
Yeah, that is a good snack. Do you ever do like the dip or like?
Sometimes I'll do like a peanut butter that I can dip them
Mhm.
in. Sometimes toast is good.
Mhm.
I try to avoid eating like chips and stuff because that's something that like I could just keep eating forever and ever. But I will say sometimes when I'm feeling it, I will do chips and salsa, but I like the
Mhm.
pineapple salsa. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet and salty kind of through and through.
yep,
I like the balance as well.
that's mine.
Nice.
All right. What is something good you'd like to share?
Well, I can share it now officially, I guess, but I am starting a full-time job on Monday.
Yay!
So it's been a long process of just like making sure it's all good because the onboarding is very time consuming. There's lots of background checks, but I would have started tomorrow technically, but they couldn't order my laptop or IT materials in time, so I'll start Monday instead. But I just finished a really awesome event as like one of my last two freelancer things for this year. One of the attendees, well, a few of them remembered me and Willie from 5 years ago when I helped with another organization in their event in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so it was really funny. One of the attendees had his photo with Willie from 5 years ago and like shared it with me. And then he did another photo op, and then he made a GIF of a photo with Willie and shared it, which was really cute. But I think between that and the fact that I get to start something new soon, it's been really nice. That in-person event that I did last week was 2 days, technically about three, 3 days for me for prep and stuff. And it really kicked my butt hard. I'm still recovering blood sugar wise from it, kind of like it's taken about a full week to really kind of recover from all of the physical parts, which makes me a little sad because I think my body is having a much harder time with live events than it did 5 years ago, or even
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm about to get health insurance again, like good health insurance, and I can go see people and talk about it and adjust things to be more normal. Yeah, that's kind of my good thing, was being busy, finishing that project and starting a whole new one.
Nice.
What about you? What's one good thing?
I'm almost done with my seasonal work. I have 2 different seasonal jobs that I'm working. There's one that I do during the day, and there's one that I do in the evenings. And I only have 2 days left of the daytime one, but I
That's
still
crazy.
have a little over a week of the other one left. So I have potentially 6 more nights that I'll be working that.
Nice.
I did take a couple off just because I have other things going on. But
Mhm.
even though my body is like, you can never do this again, you can never work from 9:30 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night ever again
Yep.
for 4 days in a row, or we will
Mhm.
kill you. I've enjoyed doing it. I really like the people that I've been working with this season at the farm, and I'm going to miss some of the ones that I won't be seeing anymore after this. So
Yeah.
it's been fun. I've learned a lot of fun new things. My body's like, hey, guess what? You're not 20 anymore. Maybe don't do this all the time.
Right? You're like, LOL, psych. No.
And I'm like, hey, you're right, body. You're right. Thanks for the reminder.
One more week.
Almost done. It'll be worth it. All right. Shall we?
Mhm.
We'd love to hear from you, and there's a couple of ways you can reach out to us. You can email us at yeoldecrimepodcast@gmail.com, where you can send us story ideas, share any spooky stories you may have, fun gifts, or even just to say hello.
You can also reach out to us via snail mail. Remember mail? Our mailing address is Ye Olde Crime Podcast, P.O. Box 341, Wyoming, Minnesota 55092. Fun fact, we like to send out thank you cards with fun stickers you can't get at our shop, so it's worth the cost of a stamp.
And on that note, as always, I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Madison,
and we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.